Alright, battlers, I went 6-0 in my Tampa Bay Regionals Cup, earning my spot at Continentals. Let's get into the tournament recap. The meta for the month of April and the Regionals Cup is Voyager, and it's a really hard meta to build a team around. I will start with one piece of advice from my friend Lyndon Ryu. Voyager is 100% about knowing your team's weakness. That is the most important piece of advice I could give you on team building. As you can see here, this is the team that I use. There are lots of holes in this team. I'm not going to lie, it's not a perfect squad. So going from left to right, Bastiodon with Smackdown, Stone Edge and Flamethrower, Alola Marowak kind of tucked in the back there with Fire Spin, Bone Club, and Shadow Ball. Venusaur in the middle with Vine Whip, Frenzy Plant, and Sludge Bomb. I do have Azumarill with Bubble, Ice Beam, and Hydro Pump, as well as Altaria behind it, Dragon Breath, Sky Attack, and Dragon Pulse, and then Sableye on the right as my flex pick. So Sableye is running Shadow Claw, Foul Play, and Return. That is a purified Sableye. IVs are 15, 12, 15. So I put Venusaur in the middle because Venusaur was really the pivot point of my entire team. It was really important for me to get the Venusaur versus Azumarill matchup right, because as you can tell here on my team, Bastiodon, Alola Marowak, Altaria, my own Azumarill, and Sableye, those Pokemon don't really counter Azumarill very well. So when you're building your team, you probably want multiple checks for different things in the meta, but if you've been diving into Voyager, you've probably come to the realization that it's really hard. It's really tough to kind of build a team that covers all your bases and makes you weak to nothing. So my team in particular was very weak to Azumarill, my only counter being Venusaur. So many of my matchups were determined by the Venusaur versus Azumarill match. If I could win that scenario, I normally could win the rest of the game, but it really depended on those two Pokemon duking it out. So whenever I encountered Azumarill, I had to make sure I had an energy advantage, or I had swap advantage, or I had shield advantage, one of the three, in order to beat it, because Venusaur will generally outpace Azumarill in a lot of situations, but Azumarill with energy is so extremely deadly. Those Ice Beams just come really fast, and I really can't afford for Venusaur to get hit by even one of them, because then it puts me at such a significant health disadvantage that playing around that, especially like in a 2 shields, the bubbles will add up, and playing around it gets really tough. I also wanted to spend just a quick moment to talk about my flex pick. So Sableye, I feel, has been forgotten. It was really big in Regional Season 1, and I don't know if forgotten is quite the word, because a lot of trainers do really enjoy using Sableye, but when I was looking over my team, I really needed something that could help me against ghost types. As you can tell here, I do have Alola Marowak, and Hypno is extremely prevalent throughout the meta, so I needed something that could really counter these confusion users. And besides Marowak with the Shadow Ball and the Bone Club bait and that really risky scenario, I guess I had access to Bastiodon, and I just had to pray that the Hypno didn't have a Focus Blast that was running Thunder Punch and maybe Shadow Ball, and then Azumarill as well as an okay counter, but you really can't take more than a few Thunder Punches. So I chose Sableye because it walls the Psychic types really hard, especially other confusion users, Hypno being the most prevalent, but Bronzong, Gallade is getting a lot of interest as well, things like Frostlass, and then it also helps me with the Alola Marowak matchup. When choosing to run Return Sableye, I kind of looked over the different matchups here, and if you can tell with my team here, I do have Bastiodon, Altaria, which is probably the king of the flyers, maybe next to Skarm. It's really close, and then you have Azumarill as well. So I had in my mind some pretty decent flying type coverage, and there were going to be so many scenarios. I knew going into it that I was going to run into Azumarill. I was going to run into these matchups that were unfavorable for something like Sableye. So should I run Power Gem that can hurt the flying types, but I already have a lot of flying coverage, or should I switch it up and just go for something neutral? So Return did get buffed recently when the Shadow Pokemon were given their special stats, the increase in attack, decrease in defense. Return also received a little bit of a buff, and it hits extremely hard. So there's only one instance in this tournament where I actually use it, and looking over Sableye's matchups as well. Most of the time, battlers, you just want to foul play. You just want to straight foul play, Shadow Claw is such a great move. It just generates energy so quickly. I really kept return on this Pokemon just in case I were to run into something like a Charmer or something that I really had no other way to counter. And return actually does really, really well. I did want to give a shout out to Shiny Hunter Ben. He is always recommending these awesome picks to me, and Return Sableye was not on my radar until he mentioned it. So I think I would be remiss not to at least shout out to him. Other than those 2 points, I think I'm just going to try to show you exactly how I play this team, because everybody's team is going to be very different. I noticed that going in, seeing these teams that were registered, everybody's running really, really different things, and it really comes down to your comfortability with your team. And back to the point that my friend Lyndon made, you have to know what your team is weak to, and you have to know how to play around it. There is no perfect team in Voyager, so if you're getting really frustrated like I was for a while, just relax. You got it. Just pick Pokemon you're really comfortable with. Try to get as much coverage as you can, and try to run your Pokemon, your team, through different filters. Think in terms of not just typings, but think in terms of meta picks, and think in terms of roles. So, for example, just really briefly, my Venusaur was actually one of my best fighting type counters, because that counter damage is resisted and Venusaur can dish out so many frenzy plants. I was not afraid at all to line up Venusaur with a Scrafty, with a Toxicroak, or with a Medicham if it were to arise. I was not worried about that at all. It really depends on the role you want your Pokemon to have when you are putting together your team of 6, and then especially when you're looking at your opponent's team and you try to assemble your best team of 3. So getting right into round 1, no more talk. I hope that gave you a little bit of insight into the team. Let's get a look at these battles. Going into round 1, my opponent is Antonir, a really, really solid battler, awesome guy. His team looks a lot like mine. He does have Probopass and then his Marshtomp in place of my Sableye. I decided to go with Altaria. I do have Azumarill and Venusaur here. This is one of my best lines that I ran the most. However, he does predict me really well here. So I led Altaria because the only counter on his team to Altaria, I guess outside of Azumarill, would be that Probopass, and I was really hoping to catch that Marshtomp in the lead. Out comes Venusaur, and Anton is doing a really wonderful job of hard countering me here. Really mastering the switch ins here. There's not a whole lot I can do. I guess I could try to go into the mirror here, but I decided to come in with, yeah, I actually do. I go in with Venusaur here into the mirror. I take the Sludge Bomb, so I was hoping that was a bait, and he got me there. So just things are going really, really awfully for us so far. He's going to fire off another attack, which would be a Frenzy Plant, and luckily we did catch that. But out comes the Probopass, just like we predicted, and he's really just outplayed me here. There's not a whole lot that I can do. The Altaria versus Probopass lead is really, really unlucky, and it really puts my team at a huge disadvantage. So at this point, I'm already trying to think of maybe ways that I could turn this around. This is one of the main reasons I picked Altaria. As you can tell there, the Dragon Breath is just wearing this thing down. Even though it's a steel type Pokemon, the Dragon Breath is still just chunking away at it. I do swap here into Venusaur, just trying to play around a little bit and see what I can do. I do have a lot of energy here, so I figured I might as well bring in the Venusaur, and this is the regional, so I might as well give him my all in every single match. He does come in with Altaria though, and another reason that I did this, even though I was losing battlers, I wanted to see what else was on his team, what he was thinking, and maybe try to anticipate what he's going to bring in game 2. So going into game 2, Azumarill lead with Venusaur and Altaria. I really like this line of 3, and I run into the Marshtomp in the lead. So I know Marshtomp has access to Mud Shot. It also does have Surf, Sludge, and Mud Bomb. So I don't know what moveset this is. I'm expecting Sludge, but it's just the Mud Bomb. That immediately tells me that this Marshtomp is probably running Surf. There are no anti-flying moves on this Marshtomp. It's not like Quagsire, so you don't really have to worry about switching in a Flyer. It also doesn't have any Ice type attacks like Whiscash does either. Marshtomp, actually a very interesting kind of flex pick. Out comes this Altaria, and this is another reason to love Venusaur. So Altaria isn't that hard of a wall as Skarmory would be. So as you can tell there, the Dragon Breaths are wearing me down, but I'm actually going to stay in this matchup here, give Venusaur a shield. And you might think I'm crazy, but I'm just trying to get these shields away from Anton because I think my Altaria can sweep in the back. I'm going to go for a third Sludge Bomb here. Really, really powerful play by the Venusaur to allow me to bring that Altaria down that low. I do consider for a moment maybe using my shield to regain switch priority, but I want to save that shield for whatever's in the back. Now that the shields are down, Azumarill with Hydro Pump is extremely deadly. Out comes Probopass, and I think he might be trying to catch the Hydro Pump, but he allows it through. He's not going to switch out. That does do super effective damage here, and then the Rock Slide's going to come. Now, this Probopass is at a point in its health where I think I can Dragon Breath down and then Sky Attack this Marsh Stomp. And I want to talk more about this, battlers, but this is a concept I call relative damage. I could have saved my shields for the Marsh Stomp, but I know, relatively speaking, that the most hard-hitting attack I'm going to face is from that Probopass. So I absolutely need to shield the Rock Slide there. I know a lot of battlers kind of get tangled up and they're not sure which charge moves to shield, and I think relative damage is a concept that I would like to talk about more. So going into this third match, I do have Azumarill with Venusaur and Bastiodon. This is a really, really interesting mirror match because if his Azumarill has play rough, he is going to win. I go straight for the Hydro Pump here. I did show off my Hydro Pump in game 2, so he knows my moveset. So he does fire off the Hydro Pump, and I'm breathing a huge sigh of relief. This matchup all comes down to maybe a little bit of baiting later on, but the most important thing here is IVs. So that Azumarill, as you saw right there in the moment, did sneak in another bubble. So I am concerned that he has an energy advantage on me, and I have to maybe sneak in another bubble somewhere here. I think I might have regained that advantage right there. I'm not entirely sure. I do shield that Ice Beam and then go for an Ice Beam of my own. Both of these trainers knowing that the Ice Beam will KO, so we are both really holding on here. I do fire off a second Ice Beam, and I think that if I win Switch Priority, I can win this game. This is going to be really, really close. But I'm very confident in the team I made, especially if he brings Altaria in the back and I can counter it with my Bastiodon. And I actually reached this Ice Beam at the last second. I think that was charge move priority. So my Azumarill does have, I guess, slightly better IVs and maybe a higher attack. So that was extremely close. Out comes Probopass, and I am feeling pretty good about this. I did bring in my Venusaur because my Venusaur's main role was to counter Azumarill, and now that Azumarill is out of the way, I'm not super concerned. Out comes his Venusaur, and I go into my Bastiodon. So he didn't bring Marshtomp this time, I think anticipating that I would bring Altaria, and I anticipated he would bring Altaria, so I brought my Bastiodon. I'm going to roast this Venusaur here with the Flamethrower. And I think I'm feeling pretty confident at this moment. I do deny that Frenzy Plant at the end. I'm going to try to Flamethrower this Probopass, and I think it'll do more damage than it actually does. So it actually is a very close match. He does land a Thunderbolt there. I go for the Flamethrower here against Probo. Now, this is really important. He is farming like hell. I swap into my Venusaur to try to surprise him at the last second, and I land that Frenzy Plant. So he was going to drop double Rock Slides on me, and I got really, really lucky there. I was able to maybe surprise him a little bit. Anton did comment afterwards and say that he failed to under tap, so maybe he was already tapping the fast move and he wasn't able to get to its charge attack in time. So either way, I swapped in right there, swooped in kind of like an eagle, if you will, and fired off the Frenzy Plant. So very, very tough round one. Like I said, awesome opponent. I respect Anton a lot, and those are really, really hard fought games. Going right into round 2, my opponent is DarkNinjaShark, one of my dear friends, an awesome girl that PvPs. She has 4 Pokemon weak to my Sableye, so that is the biggest thing that stuck out to me. I do lead Altaria because I expect her to see that and lead her Meganium, as it's probably her best counter to my Sableye. Let's see if it works. No, it does not. Out comes Frostlass here, so maybe dancing too many circles in my mind. I do come into Venusaur here against Frostlass. Now, this is a very ill-advised swap, but my attempt here to throw her off, I think actually does work out. So that was a really bad swap. If she would stay in here with Frostlass and land the Avalanche, it will KO the Venusaur, and that is perfectly okay with me. So I kind of wasted my Venusaur there, and I am fully expecting to lose this match. I do come in with my Sableye here, and we are able to almost Shadow Claw down. Out comes Meganium, and here comes Return. Boom! Look at that. Meganium is so bulky, and it took a huge chunk out of that Pokemon's life. That is so ridiculous. She did give up Switch Priority by swapping into Meganium, so I'm able to bring in Altaria and farm. Out comes her final Pokemon, and I go straight for the Sky Attack here. It will be Lantern, so not a good situation for me. I'm actually going to push for the Dragon Pulse here. This will do a lot more damage than Sky Attack, and it does land. That Lantern is really weak, and I think it can only get to maybe 1 or 2 Thunderbolts before it KOs, because these Shadow Claws are going to add up really quickly. So we are able to farm down Lantern. Out comes Frostlass, and that is GG's. I'm going to lead Sableye this time. Why not? Sableye with Venusaur and Altaria in the back. Sableye this time is going to encounter Hypno, a beautiful matchup for us. Now, as we know with the Hypno matchup, she needs to land that Shadow Ball to do any meaningful damage. She does swap out here right at the last moment. Very timely swap, but I have a perfect counter here in Venusaur. So Eileen did not bring a Azumarill, so the Venusaur wasn't as important for me, but I still needed it to counter this Lantern. I actually almost go for the farm down, but I think she was really close to a Thunderbolt, so I am going to fire out the Frenzy Plant. She does give me a shield, which is really really peculiar. But I am taking another lesson from my friend Jingles. I got away from it a bit in Go Battle League because I feel like energy is more important in that format. But he said that when you win the lead, you want to keep that advantage. So when you go into the swapped in matchup, you need to try really hard to win that so that you can retain the advantage that you earned in that first matchup. So that's why I shielded Venusaur there and brought down her Pokemon. Out comes this Hypno, and we are in good shape. I'm going to swap here to catch this Shadow Ball with Altaria, and it works perfectly. Now Altaria is going to do good work here, and all I need is one more Sky Attack to win the game. Going into Game 3 against Eileen, Altaria with Sableye and Venusaur. Please lead Meganium. That is what I am looking for here. That's what I expect. Out comes Alola Marowak. So I like Altaria against her team as well because her strongest anti-flyer is that Lantern. And even though Lantern's an amazing Pokemon, it's really, really good against Azumarill. It's not going to really crush Altaria that badly because the Dragon typing is just so OP. It would do much better against Skarmory. Out comes Frostlass here. And I have some switch shenanigans here, some Go Battle lag, I guess you could say. Some Niantic lag in general. So I do decide to come out here with Venusaur. That lag really threw me off. I'm going to allow her to take me down. Out comes Sableye. So I know she has two Pokemon that are weak to Sableye. My hope here is that I can just ride the Sableye train all the way to the win. I'm going to fire off the Foul Play here, and this will actually not draw the shield. Down goes Frostlass, out comes Alola Marowak, and I know if this is a Shadow Ball, it will KO, so I'm going to hold on to my Sableye here. Just the Bone Club, so wonderful bait by Eileen. Going for another Foul Play, and then out comes Hypno, and she knows all she has to do is get to Shadow Ball to win it. I don't think I can outpace her to a second Foul Play, so Eileen's going to take this one. We decided to let this result stand. Again, Battlers, her team was really, really weak to Dark, and I expected her to lead Meganium, but it didn't quite work out that way. It worked out really well for us, but GG's Eileen. Going into round 3, my opponent is Mr. Chris. As you can tell, my Sableye is still paying dividends. He does have Hypno, Jirachi, Alola Marowak, and then the mirror with his own Sableye. So I'm definitely bringing it. I'm going to bring my Azumarill here and then put my Venusaur in the back. In the opening matchup, I do lead Azumarill into his Sableye, so a wonderful lead situation for us. Here I'm going to over farm some energy. I do open my switch tray expecting the swap, but it doesn't come. I farm up to the Play Rough because I don't want him to know exactly what my moveset is so far. He does shield that first Ice Beam, so we are up a shield. He does fire off an attack here, and because it's not a purified Sableye, I knew it was just a Power Gem. Out comes the swap, and here comes my Venusaur. So even though he got probably 2 or 3 bubbles worth of energy during the swap, I am up by a shield, so I do have that shield advantage. This is the pivot point of the match, as I mentioned before in the intro. I need to win this Venusaur versus Azumarill matchup, so even though he shields here, I'm just going to match shields with him. I did get to another Frenzy Plant here, taking down that Azumarill, and now the biggest threat to my team is off the battlefield. Out comes that Sableye. Here comes a Foul Play, and Venusaur is able to hang on, and then I fire off another Frenzy Plant. His final Pokemon is actually going to be his Bastiodon. So I do bring in my Azumarill here, and this is probably not a great decision, but I do reveal my Hydro Pump there. I'm going to bubble down the Bastiodon, denying him a charge attack. Out comes Sableye, and we're going to Ice Beam for the win. So again, a little bit of knowledge we picked up is that he swapped in his own Azumarill against mine, which tells me it might be a Play Rough Azumarill, so I'm keeping that in mind. Sableye, Azumarill, and Venusaur again. Sableye this time is going to lead into Jirachi, a wonderful matchup for me. Out comes his own Sableye, and I'm going to swap here into Azumarill. So I did win switch advantage, and even though my Sableye could do some good work to this Sableye, I need to make the most out of my counters. He doesn't have a grass type either, so I'm extremely comfortable bringing in my own Azumarill because the role that my Venusaur can fill for me now is as an anti-tank if it needs to. His only 2 anti-grass counters my Sableye can handle. So again, looking looking at rolls and not just typings. He's going to bring in Jirachi here, so I fire off the Ice Beam. This is a good situation for me here, so at this point, I'm going to bring in my Sableye. Sableye is going to get to the foul play really quickly. I'm trying to be more kind of unpredictable on my switch in times. I don't let the timer go down all the way if I can help it, because I want to kind of jump in at a random moment. Maybe my opponent isn't tapping their charge attack and I'll catch them. So out comes this Alola Marowak, and I've already decided at this point that Sableye is getting my last shield. There's no way I'm going to shield anything with my Venusaur, because Sableye can really win this for me. I'm going to fire off another Frenzy Plant here, putting a lot of pressure on Marowak. He does give his final shield. Now, I'm not giving any shields to Venusaur, so if he baits, it's his loss, and he does. He goes for the Bone Club. He generated a lot of energy here, and very tricky, but I called it right. It is the Shadow Ball, and we were able to farm down. He only got to 3 Fire Spins, needs 4 for the Bone Club. Here comes the foul play from me, and this will bring down Jirachi. Going to the final game, Azumarill, Venusaur, and my Sableye in the back. So same team of 3, let's see if it pays off. Azumarill is going to encounter Sableye, and again, won the lead. Really, really good for me here. Expecting the swap, but it doesn't come quite yet. He does know that I have Hydro Pump, so I'm not going to work up to the play rough energy. I'm just going to go straight for the Ice Beam. In comes his Jirachi, and I'm going to counter with my own Sableye. So again, everything is lining up perfectly for us here. Sableye is actually a really great kind of neutral counter as well, so I'm going to give it a shield here against Jirachi. I don't want to take any chances losing this switched in matchup, because I did win the lead. I did work really hard. I get really lucky and work really hard to win that first matchup, so I'm not going to give him back swap advantage. He's going to bring in his own Sableye, and I make kind of a dumb play here. He fires off the Power Gem, and maybe I was just, I don't know, I fire off the return, and this is not the right move, as you can tell. It hardly does any damage at all, but I actually swap into my Azumarill here. Out comes his Alola Marowak, and the shields are down, so I'm definitely going to pump this Marowak. That is a one-hit KO. Out comes Sableye, and we're going to win this match pretty comfortably. So GG's, Mr. Chris. First time playing you. Really, really awesome trainer. It was an honor to play you. My round 4 opponent is HarrisLeader, a really, really strong trainer, very calculated. Our teams look almost exactly alike. He does have a Scavalier, but I imagine that that is for that Registeel matchup. I don't have a Registeel, so I need to be careful about my Bastiodon. I do decide to go in with the Azumarill, my Marowak, and Altaria. So I win the lead here, which is really, really nice. He comes in with his Azumarill, and I realize here that I don't have a strong counter to Azumarill. So this is really, really not a good situation for me. Again, I made the mistake of not bringing my Venusaur, and it's going to cost me pretty badly here. So I do fire off the Hydro Pump, and he returns fire with his own Hydro Pump. I do have a energy lead here, so I can win this switched in matchup. I think my plan here is to try to win this matchup against Azumarill and then have enough energy for an Ice Beam against Altaria if it comes back in. I guess, I'm not really sure, but I just know that I have to get this Azumarill off the field because I don't have anything else besides a mirror that can win. So he does swap in here, and I fire off my Ice Beam. I called it beautifully. Out comes his Altaria. I go for a second Ice Beam, just trying to put some more pressure on this Pokemon here. And I know that I can bring in my Altaria here and probably win, but he does something really good here, lands the Dragon Pulse. So I'm going to Dragon Breath down that Altaria, and I'm putting a lot of money here on my final Pokemon. He does come in with his Azumarill, and I want this Azumarill off the field, so I'm going to shield up the Ice Beam here. Trying to Dragon Breath down, but it does barely any damage to Azumarill, so I have to go for the Sky Attack. He gives it his final shield, which is really, really great. That's actually really good for me. Fires off the Ice Beam, and at this point, he's got 2 Pokemon left. I know Azumarill is almost out for the count. In comes Venusaur, so I know all I need to do here is land the Shadow Ball. He did bring his Venusaur here, so he could have lined it up with Azumarill, but again, the perils of running a team like mine, it can be really, really tricky. So I do get lucky with the lead sometimes. It just really works out well. So out comes that Azumarill, and we KO. Going into game 2, Venusaur in the lead with Azumarill and Altaria. Let's see if I called it right a second time. Venusaur into Bastiodon. So not a great matchup, but I think my Azumarill makes for a great secondary tank counter here. I'm fully expecting his Venusaur to be on the team again. I think about trying to catch the Flamethrower with the Azumarill, but I'm a little bit too slow, not counting the Smackdowns like I should. Out comes Alola Marowak, and I go right into Altaria. So I don't know if this was probably the perfect answer. I probably could have gone into Azumarill here, but I haven't seen his Altaria yet, so I figured this was a safe bet. I fire off the Sky Attack here. Marowak is going to get really weak here. Dragon Breaths are going to KO it actually. Again, Altaria with just that Dragon Breath damage is so absurd. I'm fully expecting Bastiodon, but out comes Azumarill. So he revealed his final Pokemon. I do have my Venusaur still, so I feel like I'm in a good matchup. I just need to really figure out a way to manage my energy because he does have a shield advantage. He goes for the Ice Beam there, so not good for us. I come in with my Venusaur here, and I go straight for the Frenzy Plant. He has a shield advantage, but I do have a slight energy advantage. I am anticipating the swap at any second, and if I lose that kind of swap in, if I fire off the Frenzy Plant against his Bastiodon, I'm in big trouble. So I'm going to shield up this final attack here. And here comes the swap, and out comes my Azumarill. So I did time that well, didn't fire out the Frenzy Plant against that Bastiodon. I'm going to Hydro Pump his Bastiodon here, and my Azumarill is really healthy, so I'm very confident going in here that I can just Hydro Pump and win. I expected to see a little bit more Escavalier, but I did bring my Marowak just because it makes for a great Venusaur counter. It does help with Bastiodon, but it's not a very clean matchup, and it does do well against his Escavalier in particular. So in this final game, Altaria with my Venusaur and Azumarill. This was a trio I ran quite a bit, and it worked out really well for me. This time Altaria into Venusaur. So we called the lead for a third time in a row, and it works out really well. Out comes his Altaria, and I go right into my Azumarill. So I do have my Altaria to handle his Venusaur this time. Not really concerned about bringing in Azumarill here. I do go straight for the Ice Beam. And it does land. He is going to decide to bring in his Venusaur again. I'm actually going to let my Azumarill go there because I want my shields just in case there's something like the Bastiodon in the back. I do come in here and fire off the Sky Attack, and he does shield it. So interesting that he wants to stick around with his Venusaur, but I can't allow him to win this switched in matchup. He was trying to get my shields away from me, and then out comes the swap into his own Azumarill, but I come in here with Venusaur. So perfectly countered. We ran basically the same line. I just got really, really lucky with my leads here. My team only has one true answer for Azumarill, so a lot of trainers will try to lead a flying type against you. So if you decide to use something like my team, or maybe most of the components but not all of them, people are going to try to lead flyers because they recognize that your only true counter is that Venusaur. My round 4 opponent is Shadow, a really talented trainer from Orlando. He is running Poliwrath, Umbreon, Tropius, Probopass, Alola Marowak, and Lantern. So definitely the most interesting team I've seen so far. I do have my Venusaur, Altaria, and my Azumarill here, and I don't have Play Rough on Azumarill, and I don't have a counter user. So the question is, how do I deal with that Umbreon? That really comes down to knowing your matchups and what role you want your Pokemon to play. So he does bring in his Umbreon here, and I do have an energy lead on Venusaur. I know with some energy, Venusaur can actually handle this matchup pretty well. Frenzy Plant's going to hit this Umbreon really hard, so I actually go for a second Frenzy Plant here. Again, if you don't have the right roles for your Pokemon, sometimes you have to beat them by committee. You have to kind of chip away with whatever resources you have. I'm going to farm down that Umbreon, but I did give up Switch Advantage. Out comes this Lantern, and I don't think Hydro Pump is the right move. I also don't want to reveal my moveset this early in the match. So I'm actually going to go straight for the Ice Beams here, trying to play the long game. I do get to a second Ice Beam, which is pretty nice. I do think Lantern deserves a little more play. It is a really excellent counter for Azumarill. I do bring in my Altaria here with full knowledge that I can tank at least one Thunderbolt. I just can't allow Altaria to line up with that Probopass. So I'm trying to get as much use out of my Pokemon as possible. That's just one more facet of this kind of play. We do Dragon Breath down that Lantern. His last Pokemon is this Probopass, and I'm trying to get here to the Dragon Pulse, but we don't get there. So he is going to bring us down with the Rock Slide. He does have some significant energy, and I need to really protect Venusaur here. Obviously, it's my last Pokemon. As you can tell, the Thunder Shocks, or excuse me, the Spark is actually going to be resisted, so it's not doing a whole lot of damage at all. I just need to try to outpace this Probopass, but I don't think I can do it. This is actually a really, really close matchup. If you go into PvPoke and sim this, the Probopass is really fast, and Venusaur, I think it might even be a tie. It's a really, really close match. I know there that I lost, so GG's to Shadow in round 1. Going into round 2, Venusaur in the lead with Azumarill and Altaria. So I'm really hoping to catch maybe the Umbreon or the Poliwrath. I do like that Venusaur lead against his Tropius too, because the Sludge Bomb hits really hard. As you can tell, their Lantern came in, and then I answer with my Altaria against his Alola Marowak. So I bring in Altaria here because I'm expecting that Probopass in the back, and I really can't get any use out of Altaria with this against a Probopass. So he does fire off the Bone Club there. I'm not going to take the bait. Firing off my own Sky Attack. Gonna Dragon Breath down that Marowak and expecting the Rock Boy to come out, but out comes Lantern. So I'm gonna go straight for the Dragon Pulse here, just trying to get as much damage done to Lantern as possible. Lantern's gonna spend his charge energy here. Spark just doesn't do that much to Altaria. He does undercharge though, very clever. Out comes my Venusaur here, and expecting the swap, I hold my energy, and then here comes Azumarill versus Probopass. So this Probopass could be running Magnet Bomb or it could be Thunderbolt, and it's actually Thunderbolt. This is really not a good situation for my Azumarill. I'm trying to force these shields away, so I do bait with my Ice Beam here. It does draw that first shield, which is really beautiful for me. I'm actually going to spend one shield here on Azumarill because I know I can get to the Hydro Pump. A lot of these matchups too, trainers, are about pacing. You have to kind of have a feel for how you can outpace your opponent to charge attacks. I know he can't farm me down, so he does swap here into Lantern. I go straight into Venusaur to put an end to this. I contemplate under-farming there at the last second, or undercharging so I can farm, but it doesn't work out. But either way, we get to the Frenzy Plant to take out Probo. We are tied 1-1. Going into the final game against Shadow, I do decide to lead with my Alola Marowak. I do have Azumarill and Altaria. So no Venusaur this time. Let's see how it goes. He does decide to lead with his Lantern. So Lantern is part electric. The Bone Clubs are going to be super effective, but I cannot afford to get hit by a Hydro Pump. So I have to be really careful about how I shield here. He is going to decide to fire off a charge move, and this will be Thunderbolt. Not a huge deal. I think I had an opportunity right there to work up to the Shadow Ball, but I was a little bit nervous, so I just go straight Bone Club. Just trying to chip down Lantern and catch this Hydro Pump with Altaria, but he holds his energy. So I'm fully expecting a Thunderbolt here, and I'm actually in really bad shape. This is not good for me. I'm going to almost be able to farm down, but he gets to another charge attack. I'm going to hold on to my final shield here. He has two shields. If Probopass comes out, I'm in big trouble, and out comes Alola Marowak. When Shadow was thinking about his team compositions, he thought of anti-flyers. He thought of Lantern and Probopass kind of having the same role, so he didn't bring both of them on the same team. But if he would have done that, he would have given me a really hard time. So again, thinking about roles and how you can use your Pokemon for different aspects throughout the game. I do bring in Azumarill. Out comes his Tropius, and he's expecting a bait here, so I go straight for the Shadow Ball. And he does actually shield. My shields belong to Azumarill because I know I can tank at least one charge attack here. I get to one more Shadow Ball here with Alola Marowak, which is really, really special. This is going to take his final shield, and this Tropius is finally within Ice Beam range. He does win switch priority, and again, relative damage. I know a Leaf Blade will hurt way more than anything his other Pokemon could fire at me, so I'm going to shield that up, fire off the Ice Beam. In comes Alola Marowak. Even if it's a Shadow Ball, it's not a big deal. He has to land 2 Shadow Balls to KO Azumarill, and we are able to bubble down. This is it, battlers. I took a look, and I was suddenly 5-0 going up against the elite Ferg in the championship. We have pretty much the same team, but he does have Toxicroak instead of Sableye. So going here into the championship round, Venusaur, Azumarill, and Altaria is my line. Will he lead Azumarill for me? And he leads Bastiodon. So not a great situation for either of these Pokemon. He does make the swap here into Toxicroak, and I go immediately into my Altaria. So I did learn from my practice. Again, getting familiar with this team, when I switch into a Toxicroak with Altaria, you cannot take 2 Sludge Bombs. You need to be quick on your switch, get that Sky Attack off, and don't let Toxicroak pressure you too much. He's going to farm up a ton of energy here. I do push for the Dragon Pulse, but we don't get it, so I could have fired off at least a Sky Attack. That was a little bit of a failure by me. I do come in here with my Azumarill. I know Stone Edge or Flamethrower are not going to hurt that badly, so I am going to stay in here. Bringing in my Azumarill here does tell Ferg that I have Hydro Pump, so I'm going to try to bait with my Ice Beam here. He actually makes a beautiful swap into his own Azumarill, but I bring in my Venusaur. So I have a shield advantage here because I did force that first shield. He does have a slight energy advantage as well. So we are going to actually level out here. Going to fire off my Frenzy Plant here, and we do encounter some mutual lag at the same moment here. but because we were both at 0 energy after review, the Sylph Judge ruled that my Venusaur would have outpaced him. It was super close, very, very close game, but I know in base 0 energy, Venusaur can do it. Out comes this Bastiodon. Flamethrower is going to wreck my Venusaur, but I do have that final shield here, so I'm going to shield up this Stone Edge, which probably would have KO'd, and then Hydro Pump for the win. I take game 1 against Ferg, but he is not out. He is an awesome battler going into round 2. Same line, Venusaur, Azumarill, and Altaria. Let's see if I blink first or if he does. Going into game 2 against Ferg, Venusaur into Bastiodon. So same leads that we saw before. He makes a quick swap into Toxicroak, and out comes my Altaria. Not wasting any time. I did learn this in practice. I cannot tank more than 1 Sludge Bomb from Toxicroak, so I make the swap. Out comes the Sky Attack here from Altaria. This matchup is playing exactly like it did the first time, but I wanted to compliment Ferg on one of the best facets of his gameplay that I saw. His energy management is excellent. He sneaks in these attacks here and there, and it really adds up in the end game, especially with his Bastiodon. He puts a lot of pressure on my team. I do come in here with my Azumarill, just like we did in round 1. He does fire up the Stone Edge here. Again, over farming with energy here. Not sure if he's going to try to go for an attack or if he's going to swap, so I do hold on to it. He does force my first shield there, and out comes Azumarill. Now that he has shield advantage, expecting my Venusaur in the back, he thinks he's got a clear shot to win, and this game comes right down to the wire. I do burn that first shield with Frenzy Plant, and I'm definitely going to give my Venusaur another shield because this is my best chance to get that second shield away from that Azumarill. I do fire this off here, and I'm really hoping I can maybe outpace him to one more Frenzy Plant, but we can't do it. He is definitely going to KO us here with the Ice Beam in this health range. I do bring in my Azumarill here, and I was pretty close to 100 energy, so no need to continue farming, just straight for the Hydro Pump. I actually win a CMP tie here and get to another Hydro Pump. We are both at 0 energy, and I got really lucky. Out comes this Bastiodon, and the stars are going to align. We are really, really close here, and we CMP tie for another charge attack. Azumarill wins it. Hydro Pump. Going to the final match against Ferg, Azumarill, Venusaur, and Altaria. This is a fun game as well. Azumarill does lead right into that Bastiodon, so he did lead Bastiodon all 3 times in a row. It is a pretty big hole in my team as well. Even Alola Marowak is not a great counter for Bastiodon, but out comes his Toxicroak, and as you can tell, this is a really similar game to what we've been playing, but the pieces have moved around a little bit. We do encounter some lag there, but eventually my Sky Attack does arrive. We take down Toxicroak, out comes this Bastiodon, and again, Ferg's energy management really shows here. I'm going to fire off a Sky Attack here against a Bastiodon. As we know, that wouldn't do hardly any damage at all, but it does farm down the rest of Altaria. I do come back in here with my Azumarill, trying to threaten the Hydro Pump. I do go straight for Ice Beam, and it does not draw the shield, so very, very clever by him. He's going to fire off a charge move here, which will be Stone Edge. Both these Pokemon really just neck and neck. I know these bubbles are going to add up, but his Smackdown will add up as well. I'm expecting the swap, but it doesn't come. I go into Venusaur, out comes Altaria. So he did switch his lineup. He didn't bring the same 3 again, and it really pays off for him here. Going to go straight for the Sludge Bomb. Going to let Venusaur go here. My shields belong to Azumarill. Gonna bring this in here and fire off the Ice Beam. This doesn't look good for me at all. Ferg does win this match in the end, but it's still a very, very close game. I am absolutely forced to fire off another charge attack, but he does win CMP, so I have to shield this up. Going for one more Ice Beam here to bring down Altaria. Out comes his Bastiodon, and he is going to fire up the charge move here. So maybe a couple more bubbles would have won, a couple more Smackdowns, but he does win with the Stone Edge. So that was my tournament recap. I hope it was educational. I hope it kind of helped for you guys to kind of figure out how I'm running my team. Like I said in the beginning, and I can't stress this enough, every team has weaknesses. It really depends on how you play it and being aware of your weaknesses and what your strengths are. So again, run your Pokemon through some filters. Don't think just in terms of typings. Think in terms of roles. You can have a Hypno be your anti-grass and your anti-fighter. You can have different Pokemon like Sableye be an anti-fighter and operate as a dark type with Foul Play. really kind of run your Pokemon through those filters when you're developing your Voyager teams. If you enjoyed this Voyager Cup content, please leave me a like, comment down below what you thought, let me know what team you're running, if you saw any holes in my strategy, any ways that I can improve, etc. And then if you really enjoyed this video and you want to see more Silph Arena content, just hit subscribe.